Join Tony Bodoh and Kayla Barrett, co-authors of the #1 bestseller, The Complete Experience, and learn powerful insights that will help you confidently drive your organization's success.
One of the things that has always just amazed me since we started this research is how the hidden patterns of language show up. And it's not just in one company that we find it. It's across the board. So we started out looking at it in hotels.
Yes.
And in the hotel industry, we look at this hotel, we look at this hotel, right next door to each other. And what we found is that while the principles were the same, what makes up a 5-star review or a 3-star review or a 1-star review, the principles are the same. You've got to have a relationship. You've got to have so many positive experiences. You've got to have no unresolved experiences, etc. Right? The algorithm that we've created.
Sure.
But it's the uniqueness between the hotels that matters.
So, for example, in the book, we talk about the language of a 5-star review versus the 4 versus the 3, 2 down to 1. What are the principles? When I think of principles, and you and I spend a lot of time talking about this, because we see it over and over and over with the businesses that we work with.
Right.
So you and I, we grew up together in the hospitality industry. We've done a lot of work with hotels since we have branched out and worked with so many different types of service-based companies and product companies. We keep coming back to the principles, and the principles are universal. So when we talk about creating a customer experience, that's a universal principle. Mm-hmm. What becomes unique is, what does that experience look like for your business? So no two Hampton Inns are the same.
Right.
No two McDonald's are the same, if you want to take different spectrums of business. So when we talk about these hidden patterns, it's fascinating to me that there is a principle of a 5-star review. It's going to sound different inside the culture, inside the employee demographic of an individual business.
Absolutely.
But the principles are the same. And I think we can talk a lot about that. But what are you seeing in the work that you're doing right now around studying that review? What are the principles of a 5-star review?
Well, the principles of a 5-star review really come down to a couple key things. One is there can be no unexpected negative experience. In other words, if a person knows in advance they're going to have potentially this type of negative thing happening, maybe that they know, as an example for hotels, that there's a resort fee, or for a bank, they know that there's an overdraft fee of $30. If they know those things, they may not like them, but they were aware of them and they chose to do business anyway. They chose to have a relationship. So you can't have any unexpected negative experiences. You cannot have any unresolved negative experiences. So that means you've got a problem, you've got to get that resolved before they have a chance to go online or to leave the company. And then the final component of it is you need to have multiple, multi-sensory, positive experiences. And we dive deeper into that in a lot of our work, that we talk about what that means in that, and a lot of our teaching in that. But fundamentally, it comes down to, you can't just repeat the same thing over and over again. You've got to have different senses engaged. You have to have different emotions engaged. And when you do that, you tend to have a 5-star review if you do all of those things that we talked about. If you drop off one of those, you generally drop to a 4-star. A 3-star review is like, you got what you paid for. It was a fair exchange.
It's a fair exchange.
What we see it happen a lot of times. I'm glad I went here. I'm glad I had this experience, but I'm not going back. You should try it. Maybe you can do it without paying for it, but I'm not going back, right? And so if you really think about it, this is what fascinates me. A 3-star experience is actually what people expect when they do business with you. A 3-star experience is a fair trade. I want this, and I'm going to give you this.
Transactional.
It's transactional.
Every bit
right?
of it's transactional.
Now, if you want to create a 5-star experience, you've got to go above and beyond that. You've got to give them a reason to feel like they've received so much value that they need to give back. That's what causes them. They want to reciprocate. So that's where the virality comes in, because they say, hey, I want to give back. I want to put this great review online, or I want to go tell my friends and we're talking as we're having coffee or something like that, right? That's how it spreads.
So when I begin to think about that, if we're looking at level 3 and above, and we're talking about online reviews, so there's so much focus there for businesses today. Imagine when we take those principles of multisensory, multiple experiences. It's beyond what I expected. There were no unexpected surprises to me. There were no unresolved issues. Imagine, Tony, how unique each one of those could be for every single customer experience. And so that's where the principles come back in for us again, I think.
And I was blown away actually when we were doing this research, because again, let's say 2 hotels, right?
Right.
We could look at a hotel that was, here and a block away another hotel. And we began to see that the principles played out across the board. In fact, even there was a point at which we were looking, does it hold out for luxury and mid-tier hotels and the bottom? And it held out across the board. Yes. And I was blown away by that. Now, what was intriguing to me is that as we look, though, we could see that, as you said, a Hampton Inn here and a Hampton Inn here, or I think the Holiday Inn Express was one that we actually looked at. Holiday Inn Express here and Holiday Inn Express here, both 5-star reviews.
Yes.
Both the same principles were in play. But what made them different was the emotions that were triggered. They both had multiple multisensory positive experiences, but the experiences were different. And so you've got all these brands out there that think they're doing everything the same across the board. They're not.
They're not.
And that's why some of them do better than others. Now, even if you let's go to financial services, banks. One branch does things a little bit differently than another branch, even within the same brand. But you take this brand versus another brand, what they do differently, that creates that uniqueness. And really, it's so powerful to understand what your differentiators are versus the bank down the street, or the hardware store down the street, or whatever it is, the restaurant across the way.
Absolutely. And Tony, there's so much emphasis today placed on what are best practices in customer service,
right?
Or what are our top 5 brands that are doing service really well, and we talk about that. We're talking about principles. Mm-hmm. What's missing so many times with that is those are principles that have been applied uniquely inside their culture.
Yes.
And I work with, you too, we work with a lot of companies that say, give us, let's create some best practices. And we say, wonderful, we need to know who we are.
Right.
We can talk about what is a principle of a great customer experience. That only comes to life when we marry that with what are the unique attributes of your business. What makes your product or service unique? What value do you bring? What problem do you solve that's unique?
Right.
And how do you go about doing that? We talk about this a lot, but, most every company out there today will say our employees are what make us different. And that is such a true statement.
But they don't realize how true it is.
They don't realize how true it is, because that there's so much truth to that. And it's the uniqueness that you're capitalizing on. And we talk about that mm-hmm. in some of our other videos, of the uniqueness of those employees' strengths and skills and attributes, uncovering those, untapping those, and really helping businesses begin to understand what's our principle of a 5-star review. Let's define that.
Right. So I think that's a great point. So if you look at this, yes, there are principles of 5-star reviews that are true for every company. If you look industry to industry, there's going to be some uniqueness between industries, sure. right? And at that level, let's talk about that level for a second. At that level, you could have Net Promoter Score, you could have customer satisfaction, the traditional customer satisfaction surveys, you could have ease of use surveys, any of the very popular, and quite frankly, there's statistical evidence that shows that they work, right?
Yes.
But that is based upon averages. That is based upon groups of companies. And so
not your company.
And that's where it falls apart. There's 2 areas where I think those standardized type approaches of using rating systems to really understand, they fall apart first when they try to say, this is what's standard for your industry. You're not the same as your industry. And in fact, if you try to be like the best in your industry, you'll never break through. You'll never break out, because you're going to be doing the same thing on average that the best in the industry are doing. So you may catch up with them. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's your goal. That could be a worthy goal if you're starting out in the customer experience genre.
And it may be a worthy goal. However, you are trying to become good like this company, and that's impossible.
You lose your soul in the process.
You will lose your soul. And that's where I think it's so interesting for the companies that we work with that are a part of a larger brand. And so you find franchises that are competing against one another.
Right.
And healthy competition is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't compare customer experience.
And that's the second part. That's where I see these rating systems falling apart, because, so many people are concerned about, what's the ASCI or ACSI? Where am I? Am I the top? Am I the mid? Am I the bottom? I've had clients who are the top rated in their industry, the top rated in across many industries. And they're so concerned about that number 1 rating. But the reality is, you can't get too concerned about that rating. It creates this false sense of competitiveness. And if you think about it this way, there is absolutely no competition for a 5-star review. There is none. because the customer's having an experience with you in this moment, with your employee in this moment. So you could have 5-star reviews for everything you're doing. You could have all 5-star reviews if you did it right. The company across the street that's your competitor could do the same thing and have all 5-star reviews. There is no competition
That's right.
in 5-star reviews. When you look at TripAdvisor, they'll get ratings and higher and lower and all of that. There is competition there. I'm not blind to that. But the reality is you don't need to focus on competing against other people. You need to focus on making every experience a 5-star experience.
Which begins to really alter thinking and transform thinking of what is a 5-star experience for our business,
exactly,
our customers, our product, our team, and there's a richness to that when
How
companies
unique can I
really
be?
begin.
Yeah.
Yes, and have we ever gone through that exercise of describing that or defining it, or have we? I think like most companies, they've fallen into the trap, albeit a worthy one, is with the best of intentions of we need to know what our competition is doing,
Right.
so we can decide how we need to perform. And I tell clients all the time, quit worrying about your competition. Focus on who you are.
Right.
And define that well.
Know thyself. You have to know yourself first. It is good to be aware of your competition, but you do not need to focus on your competition. And we've worked with a lot of clients, and we've said it's not important to know what your competitor is doing right now. Now, it is important to be aware where they excel and where they don't excel, because you may have to up-level some of your game. But they may have a different customer set than you have. They may have people that you don't want to attract.
Exactly.
Whatever industry you're in, there are different segments that are more beneficial for your way of doing business. The people that are attracted to Walmart are attracted to Walmart for a reason. They're not going to Macy's typically.
That's exactly right.
If Macy's try to look like Walmart or Walmart try to look like Macy's, they would lose their core customers.
Both would.
And they wouldn't attract the other ones.
They would.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's interesting with that is it is important to have an awareness of what your competition is. But if you try to model what they're doing or replicate what they're doing, you are at best a copy of them. You're an imitation of them. So your customers know the difference, and they know what does it feel like to do business with you. And when that's authentic, when it is unique, and it's executed well with intentionality, you're going to get the 5-star review.
Exactly.
It's part of human nature. We have to talk about it when it's good.
And that uniqueness is part of what causes the 5-star review, because they're like, oh, they're not like the guy next door. They're not like the one down the street. They're awesome. Now, last week I was into the guy down the street, and he was awesome too. Mm-hmm. So I can give them both 5-star, which comes back to that. There's no need to be competitive. And the more you dive into best practices and try to do what other people are doing, it actually is more likely to hurt your business than it is to help it. You've got to know who you are, and your employees and your leaders have to know who they are and who they are within the company. And that really moves it from this complete experience to beginning to understand what's the complete customer, what do they want? What's the complete employee? How do we engage the employees? Who is the complete leader? How does that leader need to behave and act? And what are they thinking and feeling that drives all of this? So if you look at across the whole spectrum, you've got to have the complete leader, the complete employee, the complete customer, and the complete experience is the encapsulation of all of it.
Absolutely.